It's been said many times and by many different people, but the Irish are a peculiar people. They're strange. It's been said that they're never happier when there's something really to be sad about. And that rings true. And it could be for many reasons that, they find happiness and joy in sorrow and darkness. I mean, a people born of the wind and the rain and the mud, they encounter darkness everywhere. But I think perhaps it's more because they're tied very wholeheartedly and directly towards their identity in who God has made them to be. That God is with them always and walks with them through everything that they do. And this, my brothers and sisters, is what we gather here in Mass for. What we gather around the altar, what we gather around the ambo, when we gather around the sanctuary, we are after making ourselves a peculiar people that are never happier when we have something to be sad about. And that's not looking for something to be sad about. We don't have to look very far, usually, for something to be sad about. But we do have to cultivate and sharpen our spiritual sight and our spiritual hearing to be able to see God when he comes, to be able to see God in our brothers and sisters, to be able to see God in ourselves and to respond to him, to be able to hear the call of the shepherd, to respond when he calls to action. We hear in our first reading the disciples returning back from their journeys, their missionary activity. We hear them returning back to their hometown, that they've been strengthened in their spirit. Paul exhorts everybody returning, Paul exhorts all of the missionaries returning to say, it is a necessity, my brothers, that we go through persecutions in our lives. That necessity doesn't mean that we need to. It means that it will happen, that it will always be there. Persecution will lie in many different ways. Sometimes persecution from outside, sometimes persecution from within. When we face physical unsurety, when we face fears, when we face spiritual dryness, spiritual darkness, when we face fear, it will always be there. The world will always be the same. When we encounter real trouble, when we encounter true fear, when we encounter real unsuredness, there's two different ways that we can respond. We can respond how people would probably respond. I would say most people would probably respond is they would get angry themselves. They would shut down. They would clam up. They would stop all of their actions. They would start questioning in a doubting way the goodness and all-powerfulness of the Creator, and saying, why would an all-good, all-knowing God allow these things to occur in my life? Why would he give these to me? And we see these tried to excuse away from sayings in our world, like Hallmark sayings, real saccharine sayings of, well, God gives his strongest or his biggest battles to his strongest warriors. Nonsense. It's a crazy, odd, trash way of saying, I don't know anything. And then we hear, we hear other platitudes of, the Creator made us to withstand the storm. No. God, or it's all part of God's plan. Nonsense. None of that is part of, no suffering, no pain, no darkness as part of God's plan. God did not create any of you. God did not create any of us to suffer. He did not create us to writhe in darkness. He did not create us for spiritual dryness. He created us for communion. And so we have to become these peculiar people as the disciples were. We have to be strengthened in our faith when we face the necessities of persecution. We have to become stronger in our faith. We have to respond back with our faith when the world throws out these just moral evils that happen, these natural evils when they occur. We have to return and answer fully with our faith to be able to see God in us and around us and acting with us. We need to be steeped in what Jesus in the Gospel of John tells us to be steeped in. This preamble, this gospel that we read, is the preamble to the last course, or the Last Supper discourse, a very long discourse that we hear on Holy Thursday and throughout parts of the Easter season. But Jesus gathers his disciples and without Judas and says, "This is how all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. I give you the new commandment. Love one another. As I have loved you, so also you shall love one another." This is what we are to be steeped in and day out. Steeped in the love of God, and not trash, throwaway, earthly love. Not fickle love, but enduring, everlasting, eternal love. The eternal love that bids us to make ourselves of sacrifice for others. That eternal love that impels us to give until it hurts. That eternal love that wants us to want the good for everyone around us. That eternal love is what we gather around the altar to sharpen our spiritual insights, to sharpen our spiritual hearing over. That eternal love forms us into peculiar people. As the disciples returned, I'm sure they encountered many things. As they went out to polytheistic places, as they went out to places that are hostile to religion, in places that had no scope or understanding of what one God is all about, of what the one God is. These disciples held fast to the Gospels. And we need to hold fast to the Gospels. These are not just platitudes that we hear, and we hear them all the time, that as Catholics we should show love. And yes, we should. But it's the contemplation of love, the constant contemplation of our place within love that forms us into be the correct disciples of God. That forms us into being those people who will go out into the world and in big moments and small, witness to that love. When we're faced with impatience, when we're faced with hatred and anger, when we are faced with neighbors who disagree with us or family members who disagree with us, we return all with love, not with hate. Hate born from the world, love born from above. We, in the words of St. Paul, must be born from above, or we do not have life within us. In the Gospel of John, Christ says, "Those who do not eat the Son of Man and drink his blood do not have life within them." That means that we, in order to be steeped well, in order to be changed into what we consume in this altar, we must be steeped as often as possible in this love. And that is the holy sacrifice of the Mass. That is our prayer lives, individual. That is our habitual charity, the corporal and spiritual works of mercy that we engage in, that steep us in this love. We are called to continue to go forth, no matter what. That just the mere presence of evil in our world is never a reason for us to stop. The presence of doubt in our mind is never a reason to stop. The presence of fear in our lives is never a reason to stop. We are called to act as the disciples of Christ. We are called to live and be steeped in this love. We see this love lived out in the saints, especially in the mystics. St. John of the Cross, Teresa of Avila, Mother Mora. We see that mystics straddle the divine and the human world perfectly. The only thing that's going to separate us right now between a saint, a mystic, and us is that even the saints and mystics have found a way to make their very breaths of prayer. They've found the way to live always and currently in the love that God gives and God bids us to live ourselves. My brothers and sisters, this gospel and these readings are a clarion call for each of us to contemplate not just every now and again, but every day. To ask ourselves the questions, how am I going to live in love? How am I going to return all that I receive for love? How am I going to be that peculiar person who does not answer the earthly with earthly, but instead answers the earthly with the divine? How am I called to live as a true disciple of Christ? And it starts here, and it pours out into our lives. And not only just our prayer lives, but in what we do and how we speak in public and private and hidden times. It's a call for us to contemplate. Yesterday was the ordination of priests. We had 8 priests ordained in Cleveland. It was beautiful. Last night we had Father Hawkins had his first Mass here. It's gorgeous and wonderful. And to see that amount of joy at the beginning of a ministry is amazing. But to also look at Father Labach, to look at the love and joy he currently has in his ministry is amazing. These men on both ends of the spectrum have found a way to straddle their lives of both the earthly and the divine, and they've done so in love of the Scriptures, in love of the gospel, in love of mission. We must seek to do the same. In all that we do, let us abide in love as we contemplate its place in our lives, in our prayer that sustains us, in the Eucharist that feeds us, as we are transformed more and more into Him who is love.